Welcome to the Mold Matters podcast. Whether you are looking for help recovering from mold illness or just want to learn more about creating a safe environment for your family, this podcast is the place for you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to an episode of the Mold Matters podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Evans, and I'm with my co-host, Mike.
Hi, Jer.
Adams. How are you?
I'm great. We are tired, aren't we?
Very tired.
Yeah, we had a big job yesterday.
Big job. We labored on Labor Day.
Yes.
Most people don't labor. They don't honor the holiday properly.
No, they don't. No.
We honored it with a 12-hour day or something.
Yeah, we felt like
longer.
It was a long day.
It was a very long day. It was originally supposed to start at 4 a.m., if you remember.
Yes.
And luckly, they moved it to 6 a.m., which is great.
But that did not shorten the time that it takes to complete the task.
No. Not at all. But here we are the next day doing a podcast.
And I think I told you this already, that I got home and my grandsons, the three that live in town, called and said, "Grandpa, let's go bowling."
And you went?
I went, yeah. I went.
How is your bowling game after like a 14-hour workday?
It was actually pretty good the first game.
Uh-huh.
And then the second, I think the fatigue set in.
Yeah. The fungal fatigue?
The fungal fatigue, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. What was your score? I was curious.
I'm not a good bowler.
I didn't mean to put you on
No,
spot.
it was like in the 130s the first game.
Well, that's not bad.
It's all right. And then the second game, in fact, my oldest grandson bowled my last frame.
Yeah.
And we ended up getting 100 exactly.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Broke the 100 mark.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Although those lanes were way bad.
Oh, not properly greased?
Not our fault at all. Yeah, none of it. Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, good to hear. Mike, we'd love to talk bowling is more, but let's kind of transition.
Why would we?
There is, I would venture to say there's mold, probably more bacteria in the finger holes of bowling balls. We should sample.
In fact, no, we should.
We should totally sample the finger.
But I will.
Future podcast, we're going to sample that.
So Tony, Grandma was with us.
Yeah.
We ordered fries because there's nothing better than bowling alley French fries. Right?
True.
They really are good.
Yeah.
But Tony said, she made sure everybody understood, you bowl with your right hand, you eat your food with your left hand at a bowling alley.
Yeah.
Because you do not want to eat what's in those bowling ball holes.
I agree with that to an extent, because you still have to hold the stabilizer with the left hand. You really ought to just have hand sanitizer and towels there.
Yeah.
Ready to just...
You know how professional bowlers, they wipe their ball off?
Yeah.
Maybe they're wiping the germs off.
We thought it was for...
grease it up. Just wiping the germs off.
Okay, look forward to a future podcast. We're going to test the finger holes of bowling balls. I'm sure it's chock full of bacteria.
Oh, it's got to be horrendous.
But I wouldn't be surprised if some mold showed up.
Oh, I'm sure.
So, interesting. Okay, well, today... we're going to do what we've done once before. We call them casual conversations. It's a little less scripted, and we kind of just chat casually.
If that's possible, to be less scripted.
Yeah. Chat about things we're seeing and just whatever comes to your mind and my mind. In fact, clear your mind right now, Mike.
Yeah.
Clear it of all.
It's not hard. Yeah, it's not hard.
I don't want you coming in with some preconceived ideas about what we're going to chat about right now.
I'm good. Yeah.
Whatever you were thinking about saying, don't throw it out the window.
That's gone. Yeah.
Okay. And we're gonna chat about just what comes to our minds, and a lot of it comes from the field, because we're obviously, yesterday we were somewhere for 14 hours trying to kill mold. So
yeah, a lot
of there should be a lot of content, is what I'm saying, for this conversation. Let's just chat for a bit. Because I think even just chatting with you, after you've been gone or I've been gone for a few days, we come back and chat about the jobs we've done or experiences we've had. It's instructive.
I think so. Yeah.
I learned stuff.
Yeah.
So, and there's, like we've said before, there's core principles, and then, that help you understand mold and mold illness, but there's so many unique situations that you kind of have to accumulate a bunch of those to really start to get a handle on how mold works, I think.
Yeah.
So, anything coming to your mind?
Yeah, let's talk about one of the most recent projects we've done.
Okay.
We did some before test.
Yeah.
And it showed up with some marker molds.
Okay. I don't even know where you're going yet. I'm excited.
Stachy and Chatomium.
Okay.
Anyway, we've always said air quality tests are just a crapshoot because mold is sporing sometimes and it's not sporing sometimes, and it can be every bit as dangerous when it's not sporing.
Absolutely.
Maybe even more.
Absolutely.
Because it's wet and it's growing and it's happy and it's creating. Well, at first it releases like an enzyme to break down its food source,
right? And
then it consumes said food source, and then it off gases. When it off gases, those are the mycotoxins that can really wreak havoc on people's health.
Yeah.
So anyway, this place, it did come back with some mold, and so we knew there was going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
But this is the one where, Jeremy, you and I, we seldom do jobs together.
Yeah,
but
I remember.
Yeah, you walked in and quickly came back out.
I was only in there 5 seconds.
Yeah.
But I could tell in 1 second that
as soon as you walk in,
I did not want to be in there.
Yeah.
In fact, that's probably the worst I've felt. That might be the worst I've ever felt.
Really?
It instantly made me feel like I wanted to die. I'm not even, trying not to exaggerate.
No, I know.
But I just instantly felt heaviness and like panicky inside.
But it wasn't an odor.
There was no smell.
No.
I mean, maybe a smell, but it wasn't like musty, typical musty.
Right. Yeah.
But I just instantly knew that I did not want to be there, and I instantly felt panicky and head and heavy and chest, and I couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
Just all at once. So I want to thank you because I went to go get a Tyvek suit and start, strapping up, and you carried the lion's share on that job because it wasn't.
Well, no, I knew that you were very, very sensitive to.
Well, let's talk about you on that one because you did a walkthrough and you're like, I even asked you, I was like, is that the worst house you've ever been in? And you're like, it's one of the worst, probably an 8. If 10's the worst, that's an 8.
It's an 8, yeah.
And I was like, wow.
Where's the 9 and 10 at?
And I thought, well, what's crazy is there was no sign of mold either, at least initially, right?
Correct.
No visible mold.
No visible mold. No.
It wasn't until you told me you started treating the window seals.
Yeah.
And here's an interesting fact that I think some listeners might know, but if you put some kind of,
an oxidizer
inside, pour it into your window sills. Oftentimes the window sills, we've talked about this, it looks like dirt.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's fuzzy, sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just looks like grime and build up.
Right.
But if you pour an oxidizer in there,
it starts to bubble.
It starts to fizzle and bubble and that's a good indicator that's mold without taking it to the lab. Or it could be bacteria, but But tell me about that.
Mold.
What happened when you tell me about that? You poured some liquid in there?
I've literally treated thousands of window sills.
Yeah.
And when we say window sills, we're talking about the windows that slide from the left to the right.
Yeah.
And they have that track on the bottom, and the window slides
when they're closed.
Within the track.
There's a track inside the house.
Right. And they're designed to be able to condensate. The water runs down the window, goes down into that track, and then there's a weep hole at one end or the other of the frame of the window, or both. Yeah.
Usually one.
Those weep holes never work. They really don't. All the mold starts to grow in the corner of that track.
Yeah.
So anyway, when we treat a home, we insist with our technicians and of course ourselves that we treat the windowsills actually manually. We'll clean them.
Yeah.
Because you've got a lot of soil burden and mold on top of mold on top of soil on top of mold. So we worry that we're actually getting to it unless we physically remove the mold out of the windowsill. Anyway, so I doused it with an oxidizer. Bubbles just kept coming, just fizz like crazy.
Did it expand as well? Kind of grow or just bubble?
No,
sometimes you
both.
spray it, come back, it's 3 times as big.
Yeah,
as it
3
was.
times as big. So then I cleaned that out, and usually one shot is good enough. And then I gave it another shot, and here it comes again.
Grew back?
Just the bubbles, like crazy, or the fizzing. So I let that go for a while we're treating the rest of the home. I wiped that down really well with a very quality microfiber rag. And then I thought, well, let's just for kicks, let's hit it one more time to make sure, right?
Yeah.
again, every bit is stronger than the first time. It just...
Did it ever stop?
Yeah, it finally did, but
Okay.
it took 4 or 5 applications of this stuff to get it to finally calm down to where, okay, I know everything in there is completely dead or
my
denatured,
gosh,
you know?
that's unbelievable.
It was crazy.
Is it every windowsill or
Yeah, I mean, the north exposure were worse,
worse?
but all of them were bad. They all were bad.
gosh.
Yeah. And then the other crazy thing about that house that I noticed is there were 2 floor drains in the utility room, which is really unusual
Yeah.
to have 2 floor drains.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you, neither of them had enough water in them to fill the
P-trap?
P-trap.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that was a big part
Just
of
pulling it right into the unit. Is what
going
you think?
right in. The furnace was right next to it. I mean, both floor drains were within inches of the filter.
Yeah.
So I think that was an issue.
Yeah.
They had mentioned multiple problems where they had water.
Well, and then, do you remember what? Is it okay to talk about? If we're not using names, it's
Yeah,
fine to
yeah,
talk about
yeah.
this in detail, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is. Can I rewind? I'm glad the casual conversations went this way.
Yeah.
Because this was so interesting.
Yeah.
We show up, and they came to the door, and the first thing I noticed was the husband could not walk very well.
Right. Struggling.
Just
Yeah.
the you could tell the joints were and everything, and even upper body dexterity was not there,
Yeah.
and just really struggling. Pleasant people, but
Really nice. Yeah.
And then they just came out on the porch, and then right behind him was his wife with a walker,
Yeah.
or a walking
cane.
cane
Yeah.
walking cane.
Yeah.
Anyways, and that instantly caught my attention. I hadn't been in the house. We hadn't been in the
Yeah.
house.
And these were not old people.
Yeah, maybe mid-50s.
Yeah. Yeah. Younger than me, for sure.
That
Yeah.
caught me off guard, because I'm like, 2 people with walking disabilities
in the same house.
This is
Yeah.
going to come. Okay, remember this, because this is going to come into play after the job's over, right?
Yeah.
You know where I'm going
Right.
with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could not walk very well, but the nicest people, and we're chatting with them, and Mike and I aren't talking at this point, but in my mind, I instantly go to that. I bet it's the mold, because we had seen the before tests.
Yeah.
Stachycatomium, pretty high levels. And in my mind, I'm like, it's the mold that's incapacitated them.
Yeah.
And then, did you pretty much have that same thought instantly as well?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I am constantly catching myself because
You think everything's mold?
Well, yeah, Tony, my wife Tony is always saying, "Mike, everything is not from mold," and
Yeah.
so I have to catch myself often, But that's an incredible coincidence for
Yeah.
2 people to have basically the same symptoms
Yeah. Some walking
in the
issues.
same house. Yeah, it's just, you got to look at environmental something going on there.
And so details are fine, right? You're saying, because I was really intrigued. You said, as you went throughout the house, windowsills and the way we do our whole home part of the treatment. I mean, we're in every room in the house.
Yeah.
We're in the back. We're addressing every square inch of the house, right?
Right.
So you're in someone's all over in their house.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember you telling me, you're like, there are a ton of
there's
painkillers and steroids
and prescription drugs and even homeopathic drugs and CBD and just all kinds of stuff to try to get them to feel better. I'm sure.
Yeah.
They're just on this horrible journey of how do I get through each day.
Yeah.
You can tell just by the amount of medicines that are in the house. It was really eye-opening.
Well, see, for me, the story was coming together as you would come out. I stayed in the car for the most part and was doing work.
Yeah.
You'd come out and tell me little things, and the pieces started falling in place for me where when you mentioned that to me, I'm like, well, that makes sense, because it feels so horrible in that house.
Yeah, how could anybody survive?
How could anyone survive? But then at the same time, they were so pleasant.
Yeah.
I was like, how are they so pleasant? And then you mentioned that. I was like, oh, okay.
There's a number of pharmaceuticals and supplements that were, I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure they don't want to take them, but they have to take them to get through the day.
Well, that kind of reminds me of your mom's story that you shared, how she was on steroids and painkillers.
Yeah. And she hit a point where, I mean, we all know people. I know a person very well that you hit a point where you take so much of that stuff that now you're not even taking it for the original problem.
Yeah.
You're taking it because you're addicted to that whatever medicine and you can't live without it.
Yeah.
and it's a terrible place to be. But the genesis of all of those situations are usually, legitimate.
Yeah.
It's just it's rough. But that house was bad. Yeah,
they have very legitimate.
So
reasons.
I know you know this, but I could feel my body just reacting to that house really poorly. I was achy, and my joints ached. My hip hurt. I had a headache.
Well, mention this.
And I was irritable as heck. Yeah.
Because I was gonna say they were so pleasant.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, halfway through is when
I was just
kicked off at the
I
world.
don't get bad, do I often?
No.
And I was just like, I can't get a hold of anybody in the office. My extension cord keeps popping a breaker.
You like get mad at your extension cord or something?
I did.
I've actually done that before.
But
I didn't think of it as mold though. I was just like, I'm having a rough day.
No, the more and more I do this for a living, the more I realize that your environment is so absolutely critical to your personality. You know, it really is.
Yeah.
Well, not just your personality, your overall health as well, but it affects your personality.
Yeah. Totally it does.
Yeah.
I've definitely been more emotional or angsty after I've been in a really not good environment. Well, and we've mentioned, when we talk about the symptoms of mold, we've talked about behavioral as being part of that.
Anxiety and
depression, anger. We know someone who has dealt with anger or more than one. Yeah. And I can see it.
Yeah.
I can see it. And
absolutely. I was a little nuts.
Yeah.
There for a while.
How long after did it?
Oh, a month later. No, I'm just.
Well, you were wearing PPE, full face respirator.
Yeah. I didn't feel better until the next morning.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, okay. You mentioned some of the aches and pains.
Well, and let me also say this: is when I got back to the warehouse, I walked in Tony's office, and I talked to her just for a few seconds, and she said, "Mike, you're giving me a headache. You need to go home and shower." Oh yeah. Yeah. So she could tell. She could tell from what was on me. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell me this. Well, here's the connection I wanted to make. We saw those two people, they came on the porch and they both had walking issues. And then when you, at the very end, were describing your experience in there, you were like, I have such pain in my left hip, right?
Yeah.
In my hip.
Yeah.
You pointed over your left hip and I was like, well, what? Really?
It was inexplicable. Yeah.
And you were like, and I was like, describe the pain. You were like, it feels like pressure. And then you started saying,
inflammation.
Maybe inflammation.
Yeah.
And I'm like, ding, 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 ding. Because that's such a huge thing with a lot of autoimmune /
I just would have never thought it would be that acute. That quick.
Yeah.
But it was, that was a weird experience.
Like, did it hurt to the touch or to walk or what?
Hurt to walk. Well, to walk and to sit and to breathe.
So, anyways,
it was inflammation.
Crazy that happened after we had seen those two people that couldn't walk very well. Yeah. And then to see your hip hurting in just a 4-hour period.
And to see me going mentally nuts for a few minutes and the headache and everything that followed. And
I know.
Yeah, I did not feel well. I'm excited to see their results on their tests.
Yeah. Well, I forgot to mention this earlier, but as we were leaving, or as the homeowners were leaving, again, they were so pleasant. And I remember the lady she just said kind of laughingly, you won't believe how many floods we've had.
Yeah, she did. Yeah. He started listing them and it was like, I don't know, 7 or 8. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, oh man. So,
and I've decided in this situation, it's the people who just live with the leak. For a long time. That is so much. It's not necessarily the number of events you've had with water. Yeah. It's how quickly you can get them cleaned up. Yeah. And if you just live with them, it's much worse than if you live with them and only have a few. That's still much worse than having a lot and getting them fixed right away.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I won't go too much into this, but do you remember this other guy that I went up to and who had a similar thing? He thinks some of the leaks went on for 20 years.
Yeah.
And then as he started tearing out stuff, he realized that they, instead of fixing the moldy floor, rotting floor,
they put floor on top.
Put some more subfloor and a new floor on top.
Yeah.
That rotted. New subfloor, floor on top.
Oh man. Yeah.
Usually like OSB doesn't get moldy it's usually mostly surface.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you could see that black had permeated the whole OSB in certain areas.
Wow.
Like the whole
Yeah.
piece of OSB and plywood was black.
I can't tell you how many.
Wow.
I can't tell you how many horror stories I've heard of people thinking that, like with that case, or even with sheetrock. Well, I got moldy sheetrock. If I just put new sheetrock over the moldy sheetrock,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they spray it with something. You know,
Yeah.
they probably spray it with bleach or something that
Yeah.
doesn't work, and then put new sheetrock over. They think they'll be fine. What they're doing is making a toxic home that's going to be toxic forever.
Yeah.
Until they tear that down.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's
You can't seal mold.
you can't seal it away. You really can't.
No.
You cannot seal mold away. Do not try.
Yeah.
I think that was a good casual conversation.
I think it was great.
I was glad to see where that went.
Yeah.
I didn't know where it was going to go, but I'm glad. Can we conclude with this? Because I think that was a good length. But
Yeah.
what are your takeaways from that story? Any key takeaways?
I don't know. It's just your environment is just crazy critical. I remember years ago we had this healthcare practitioner that used to send us tons of work, and I would get there to the customer's home to treat the home, and they would say, my healthcare practitioner was always the same person. Her name was Julie. Julie wanted me to tell you the mold is upstairs, or it's in the downstairs basement, or whatever. And I remember thinking, she's nuts, but she was always right. Always right.
Wow.
So finally one day I called her. I said, Julie, I got to know. This is making me crazy. How do you know where the problem is in the home? And she said, this has always stuck with me. She said, Mike, your aura or your spirit or your soul, whatever you want to call it, your conscious, knows everything about your environment. All I have to do is ask the right questions, and I can tell what's going on in a home. It was incredible. So my point is, your environment is so critically important. Make sure your house is in good order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what you said earlier, because it sounds like they didn't jump on these floods and leaks.
Right.
I liked your takeaway there, which is, I mean, even something that seems innocuous, like I spilled a glass of water on the carpet.
Yeah.
You really ought to jump on that.
Yeah.
I mean, that can seem really small. Another, maybe another one that's common is when your toilet plugs up and overflows.
Yeah.
You really got to jump on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that happens in everyone's home at least a few times, over years.
Or maybe you have a leak in a sink where it only leaks when I turn the sink on.
Yeah.
And you dismiss it like, well, I don't turn the sink on that much.
And it's just a drip.
Yeah, just a drip. Well, over time, same with outdoor drainage. My rain gutter is not working right, but we haven't had that much rain this year. I'm not going to worry about it. It will come back to bite you.
It will.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for sharing that story. Let's go be in a moldy house together again sometime.
I look forward to it. Yeah.
Until next time.
Yeah. Hey, make sure you subscribe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice, Mike.
Yeah.
We weren't even reminded to say that today.
No, but Nez gave me a look, so I thought I'm missing something, I bet. So.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Thanks,
Until
guys.
next time.
See ya.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Mold Matters podcast. Be sure to subscribe for more in-depth information on mold illness and recovery.